You can't believe it, but the car explodes, and the brother a quarter a circumflex a half of this. CRS is messing with us. Nick, the more rational one, thought it was just a flat tire, a spare would do. But when his brother opened the glove compartment, CRS branded keys erupted like a fountain. Seeing this, the little brother thought Big Brother and CRS plotted against him and went insane. Ignoring Nick's explanations, he yelled and bolted out like a madman, leaving Nick no choice but to hail a cab home, completely unaware that even the cab he caught was the CRS. The car raced like a race car. Near the river, the driver jumped out. Nick couldn't believe it and plunged into the river. The submerged car sank like a stone, and Nick found he couldn't open the door. In a panic, he fished out the CRS tool had been left with. In a life or death moment, Nick smashed the window with the tool and swam to the surface, saving his life. The next day, he marched straight. When Nick arrived at the CRS office building, he was left dumbfounded as CRS had vanished without a trace. The police found CRS had no registrations. They had no leads on Nick's bizarre story. Without any leads, the police said they'd keep investigating, but Nick knew he wouldn't uncover any truthful answers, so he headed to MS Jin's place hoping for a clue. But when he got there, she claimed she didn't know anything and suggested she change clothes. While waiting impatiently, Nick found a cotton candy machine in MS Jin's house. The lamp was smoking, and he discovered it was due to rip the label on the bulb, leading to his accidental hand burn. When Nick went to wash, he found no water. Even MS Jin's fridge was empty, raising doubts about habitation. The drawers were bare, and the pictures on the table were newspaper clippings, prompting Nick to think MS Jin was definitely pulling a fast one. Nick immediately held up the picture to confront MS Jin, who then reluctantly admitted she knew the victim and that the place was being watched, but Nick wouldn't. Tired of the lame antics, Nick smashed the surveillance with a metal pipe. At this point, MS Jin realized things were getting real, while Nick still hadn't a clue just how bad it was. The next second, a bunch of guys in black suits popped up out of nowhere. They went to town blasting the house, and MS Jin dragged Nick out the back door. The attacking black-clad henchmen started shooting, but thankfully, Nick and MS Jin made a narrow escape. Only now did Nick realize this was no mere game. Although MS Jin claimed she was just a temporary worker, she knew CRS was only in it for the cash. Nick had taken a pre-game test to gather customer notes, voice samples, and psychological profile info to guess his bank account password. Realizing the severity, Nick immediately called the bank to check his account information. When he said his password to confirm, he could hardly believe his ears. Nick quickly relayed the info to his lawyer, insisting he call the cops and explain his predicament. Because Nick was currently on CRS hit list, he had to hide out in a nearby shack he owned with MS Jin. But before long, his lawyer called Nick to say his account hadn't been touched. MS Jin figured that Nick's lawyer had been bought off. Nick couldn't comprehend how his lawyer could betray him. While trying to sort through his thoughts, he suddenly felt dizzy, then realized had been played again. Nick collapsed. Surprise, MS Jin had tampered with his tea. She spilled the beans. MS Jin was actually a CRS operative. Everything she did was to earn Nick's trust, and the bank call had made was intercepted by CRS. MS Jin and CRS colluded in a plot to get Nick's password. His lawyer didn't betray him, but Nick realized the truth too late. When Nick woke up, he found himself in a hole it seemed had been sent all the way to Mexico. Nick never imagined he could go from billionaire to broke drifter in no time flat. In this strange land, all he could do was seek the embassy's help, but alas, no passport. No, the embassy staff was skeptical of his outrageous story. All he could do was claim he'd been robbed, but they quickly pointed out he still had that pricey watch on his wrist. They didn't believe him at all and refused to send Nick home. So, in desperation, he sold off his birthday gift from Dad to cover a ride to a motel at the US-Mexico. Nick scraped together his last cash, begging for a ride. A good Samaritan helped him back to San Francisco, but his house had been auctioned. He climbed over the water into his home and lived through an unforgettable day. The next day, rummaging through his room, Nick found a forgotten coin jar. He found his brother's hotel, only to hear he had been taken by police for a psychiatric evaluation. The manager handed him the address left by the police. Nick was at his wit's end. In desperation, he recalled his ex-wife, thinking she might be his only lifeline. His ex-wife, never seeing him so frazzled, invited him to a meal. Nick realized his issues, going from wealthy to broke. If only he hadn't been so focused on money and had cared more about those around him, perhaps his ex wouldn't have left. Now, with nowhere else to turn, he sincerely apologized to her, seeking forgiveness. Just then, an advertisement on TV caught Nick's eye. Wasn't that the receptionist from CRS? Now he was on TV acting as a doctor, selling meds. Not just a minor actor. Finding him could lead Nick to the real CRS. So, Nick figured he'd handle this first before searching for his brother and decided to squeeze the receptionist for info on the mastermind. Nick visited the restaurant mentioned by the receptionist, but the owner's Mandarin made communication impossible. Turning, he spotted a celebrity signed photo on the wall, then pretended to be staff and dialed for all. But his wife said she took the kids to the zoo. Grabbing the clue, Nick dashed off to the zoo. Seeing Nick, the receptionist nervously begged, saying her kid was still there. Nick ignored her excuses and laid out the truth. The receptionist claimed to be just a worker with no motives. Nick demanded she take him to CRS real headquarters. The receptionist led him to the CRS headquarters, and Nick was blown away on entering. Everyone he had seen before was right there. Nick felt like he was living in the Truman Show. Fuming, he bolted toward Ms. Jin. He pulled out a gun, threatening Ms. Jin to come with him before he could finish. Security stormed in, shooting like they had a signal, and the duo panickedly scrambled for the exit. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe. Don't miss our upcoming fun stuff.